We got a request from Team Giant Alpecin to help them with their time trial testing. So they did mostly aerodynamics testing on the track in Apeldoorn to optimize the position, to see in which riding position the aerodynamic drag was the lowest. And we were present there to help them to check if the positions they wanted to attain were also still within a certain ergonomic range. So as a bike fitter, I helped them by checking the joint angles of the most important joints that are involved in cycling, to check if those angles were still within a certain range which is acceptable. So we started with an intake. I measured a number of parameters related to the flexibility of the knee flexors and the hip extensors. This determines to a large extent how high I can put the saddle of the rider. I also looked at the flexibility and the mobility of the shoulders of the rider, because it's an important determinant for where the handlebars should be positioned for each individual rider. I talked about injury history with the riders, and also what their annual usage of the time trial bike would be, and if they have any known limitations or current factors that I should take into account when putting them in the most optimal position. For this case, we used quite a special protocol. Normally in our bike fitting protocol, we start with a static measurement. We measure all the body dimensions of the rider and then adjust the bike in a starting position based on that. In this case, we used the current bike setup as a starting point. So we measured their bike with the XY tool. The XY tool is a very precise and accurate and quick way to determine where the saddle and the handlebars are in relation to the bottom bracket. We measure X and Y coordinates. So we measure how many millimeters behind and above the bottom bracket the saddle and the handlebar is. So based on these 4 simple numbers, we can more or less set up or copy the entire bike position onto the position simulator to get a quick and very accurate way of copying a bike position from one bike to the other, or from one bike to the position simulator to do further testing. We set up the position simulator based on that position, and I performed the first measurement with the motion analyzer to see which joint angles this starting position gave. We started the motion analyzer measurement with applying the 8 sensors on strategic locations on the body. So there are 3 sensors on the foot, there's 1 on the knee joint, 1 on the hip joint, 1 on the shoulder, 1 on the elbow and 1 on the wrist. And based on the location of these 8 sensors, the LED sensor of the motion analyzer determines the joint angles and the distances from one sensor to the other. And based on this information, I can make adjustments to the bike to further optimize the riding position. After we determined what the optimal position would be from a bike fitting or ergonomics perspective, we also measured the pedaling style of the rider with the pedaling analyzer. So we watched what kind of pedaling style the rider had in this time trial position, and I gave them some tips and advice on how they could improve their pedaling efficiency. After this, they started to do their laps on the track to measure power output at a given speed in order to assess the aerodynamic drag. If needed, they came back to me afterwards if certain adjustments to the bike were needed, and if they wanted to have another check on what their position was, then I could also provide this check. I think for most riders there were small steps. I don't think I have changed any of their saddles or handlebars more than a few centimeters. That's already quite a big change actually for a professional rider. In most cases we could move the saddle up a little bit simply because there is a small difference between a road position and a time trial position, where you can put the saddle a bit higher in the time trial position than the road position. The second thing which I did in quite a lot of the riders was to move the handlebars up a little bit. There has been a trend in the pro peloton to move handlebars down and away from the rider as much as possible. This is not always aerodynamically the best position, and it's certainly not from a bike fitting perspective the best idea, because it leads to a very small hip angle and it compresses the blood flow and to the legs, and it makes the muscles work at a range which is not optimal. So we move the handlebar up in quite a lot of the cases. In the end, I think it will make most of the riders faster, and they will have a better bike position.